Welcome, I'm Nick Newton, and today I'm going to show you guys how to read a micrometer, and later in the video I'll show you some quick, proper care techniques to make sure that they last a long time and that they continue to read accurately. Today we're going to focus specifically more on a standard micrometer, or kind of like the most well-known one, which would be an OD micrometer. These ones are used in tons of different applications. Basically you're taking from two planes an overall distance, or maybe the diameter of a shaft. The thing that is important to know about micrometers is that they all read in a 1-inch increment, and we're talking specifically here in the imperial system. They do make metric micrometers, but I live in the USA, so primarily 99.99% of my work is going to be in inch, and if it's in metric, then we convert it over to inch so that we can read it with our metrology that we use. So that means that you would have a 0 to 1 inch, you would have a 1 to 2 inch, which is right here, then 2 to 3 inch, 4 to 5 inch, 5 to 6, so on and so forth, and all the way up to about 12 inches. When you get into the higher inches, if you get into like a 12 inch or an 8 inch or anything like that, it gets kind of tricky on the measurement tactics, and it takes a lot of practice and actually to get accurate measurements on that. More specifically, you have to be very careful about the amount of torque that you're putting onto the anvil when you're taking a measurement. You can very easily, in those larger measurement increments, you can very easily over torque it and get a false reading. But we're gonna go into that here in just a little bit. I have a few different other style of micrometers here. Again, we have the OD style micrometers. There's blade micrometers where the anvil is actually a blade. Two blades that come together that are not round rods that meet. You can have point micrometers where they come to a point and meet. You can have anvil micrometers if you're trying to take it from the ID of a bore to a flat surface. These are actually pretty handy for a lot of different applications, and sometimes they just fit into those weird spots. You have depth micrometers. There's just so many different types of micrometers. So if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're probably pretty new to the whole micrometer scene and you just want to learn how to read one. So we're going to look specifically at the 0 to 1 inch today. I would highly recommend when you invest into a micrometer set that you get one that reads in 10th increments. Meaning that if you see this standard scale on the face, every micrometer is going to have this. There's going to be numbers that go around a dial, and there's going to be a standard scale, and you'll see it go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you look on the back side of that, you'll also see linear lines going up and down with numbers across the bottom of it, and those will say 0 all the way to 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And that is the 10th scaling, and that is really important. So if you're gonna buy a micrometer, just spend the money and get a quality micrometer that also gives you the 10th increments. Now, if you're not into an application that requires that tight of precision, going down to the 4th decimal place, then a standard micrometer will probably be just fine. So the brand of micrometer that I personally use is Mitutoyo. Now there's plenty of other great micrometers out there. There's Starrett, there's Fowler, there's all kinds of Brown, I don't know if Brown & Sharp makes mics, but there's a bunch of different companies out there that make micrometers. And again, it's gonna boil down to your preference and the amount of money that you wanna spend and what you're doing. If you're doing precision work that has tight tolerances, I would highly recommend that you invest into a very high quality set. I personally, like I said, I invest in Mitutoyo because they are a very highly sought after brand. They're well known, they have a great reputation, and these things last forever if you take care of them. Let's get into how we actually read a micrometer. Earlier, I was talking about how there are linear scales. So I will just show you right here. These are the scales that go up the shaft. They go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you have this little thimble. As it unwinds, it goes all the way out to 9. And you can see I'm passing all these numbers that are rotating around on this dial. And we also have the numbers on the back. I can't really get this in. These are the 10th increment linear lines that I was talking about. So how do we actually read this? What do these numbers mean, and what is this? So let's scroll it down. I'm gonna take it all the way down to 0. So I'm gonna close it down and I'm gonna check for my accuracy. Now when I check 0, I'm not putting a lot of torque on this. I am just going to close it until I feel it make contact, and then I'm gonna stop. Over torquing is probably the #1 cause for misreading, and maybe under torquing being too light on the pressure. It's a very fine feeling, and you're gonna have, it takes time on the clock and it takes practice to actually get that. But you wanna make sure that you have contact, firm contact, but not over torquing it where you're binding the gears and giving yourself a false reading. So if I come down here, I felt it stop. Now this micrometer is actually showing that it's off 0 a little bit. So it's not actually quite lined up, even though that the anvils are completely closed. So this can be a couple things. Either the micrometer is knocked out, or there's actually just a small amount of debris between these two anvils. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure that there is no debris between there, I'm going to take a piece of paper, I'm going to slide the piece of paper through, I'm going to slightly pinch the piece of paper and slide the mic off. And that's going to clear out any kind of debris that's sitting on either of those two faces. So we're going to take it down to 0.0, okay? So the micrometer, the anvils are closed, and the 0 is in line. So the first line that you see is, I have my little pointer thing here, is 0, and then the 0 on the dial is lined up, and the anvils are completely closed. Now they're not over tightened, they're not, you know, I'm not stressing it out, anything like that. So if I just open it up, I'm going to open it up to a random number here, and we're going to take a look at this. So I'm going to give a little bit of a range so I can see what's going on here. The way that you read this is actually really simple. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at what size micrometer we're using. We're using a 0 to 1 inch. So if I had this thing all the way maxed out, the max reading would be 1.00. So since I know that, anything below that 1 inch mark is going to be my first numerical value. It's going to be 0 point something, okay? And then we're going to follow this line up. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4 is not quite visible. So being that 4 is not quite visible, we're going to have to do some math here. These 4 hash marks in between it. So 0, this would be 25, this one would be 50, this is 75, 100, and it goes on. So we have 125, 150, 175, 200, etc. all the way up. We're going to be looking at these numbers that go up, and then we're going to be looking at the number on the dial. It's going to be, in addition, it's going to be the value of whatever this is on the scale plus this number. So if I were to be going to 3, I can see it's 75. 75 plus 17, I really should have used an easy one, but that should be 392. So that's how you would do that. So you would say, okay, I can see 3. So my next decimal point, so it'd be 0.3 and then 92, 0.392. So if I go open a little bit more, open it up a little bit more. Let's just take something like easier. So right here, this would be 0.4 and 25, 50, 50 is on the 0, so it'd be 0.450. That's how we're gonna read this. It's kind of confusing, and it's gonna take a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. Let me show you something real quick. If I were to take this 1/2 inch, we're gonna mic it and we're gonna see if this is actually true. We're gonna take this 1/2 inch pin, I'm gonna come down on it. You can notice I'm barely even putting any pressure on this, like very, very lightly. I can make it feel contact. The part's not falling out because it's actually just light enough not to fall out, but if it weighed a lot, I can still kind of move it around a little bit, okay? So over tightening, again, is one of the #1 issues that you're gonna have for getting a false reading, or you're gonna have debris in the way or something like that, but just don't over tighten it. So in a perfect world, this would be 0.500 because it's a 1/2 inch pin. So I'm gonna take my reading, I'm gonna throw it under my little microscope here, and we're gonna take a look at what it's at. And our reading is 0.5, so I can see the 5, and it's at the 0. So it is actually at a perfect 500, or what appears to be perfect. So if I actually read this down to the tenths, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll it over, okay? So without touching it or anything like that, I'm actually gonna lock it in its position. This little keyway right here, or this little tab on the mid-tutorial mics, is the lock. So I can lock my anvil and it won't turn. If I flip it over, now these are where all the numbers come into play on the back side of it. So you can see nothing really quite lines up, or so it seems, right? What we would be doing on a 10th increment is that we're gonna be looking at these lines. Now, the numbers on this actually don't really mean anything on this side. So the numbers up here on the dial, the rotating shaft part of it. The number at the bottom actually is what represents the 10th. So it's either gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, 9 tenths, or a thou. You're gonna look for the line that lines up evenly. Now, what I mean by that is, this is super shaky and crappy, I'm so sorry for this, but we're looking for a line that lines up evenly with one of these 10 lines on the back side. So if we roll it around, none of them really line up. So the 0, this one lines up perfectly right here, right? So this one, this one lines up pretty much perfectly. So that would actually be 0. So the pin that we measure would actually be 0.50000. So a perfect 1/2 inch. is what that shows. Now, if you were to be, okay, just for the sake of example here, now if I were to take this one, so let's say you measured your pin or you measured your value, and you're looking around, you're rolling around this thing, trying to find which one lines up. Okay, these two line up, then we scroll down and it goes 3. So that would be 3/10. So we can see it's a little bit past 0 on the 500, right? So there's 0. So it's a little bit past 0, and it's not quite 1 thou. So it's gonna be in the tenths somewhere. So that's when we roll it around, and just like we saw that this one line happens to line up with the 3. So it would be 0.5003. So that's the 3/10 increment. Now, the only difference would be between that measurement and going up to another size, like a 1 to 2, is you automatically start out as 1 inch. So if I bottom this all the way out to 0, then we have a perfect 1 inch. And then going up from there, it's gonna be 1 point, whatever you're reading between 1 and 2 inches. And that's really how it's gonna break down. Just remember that it's the scaling, and you're gonna always be doing addition. So you're gonna be adding numbers together. And you just build the number from left to right. You're starting with your size. So if you're using a 0 to 1, it's gonna be 0 point whatever. If you're using a 1 to 2, it's gonna be 1 point, and then you start building your numbers off of that. And then you just wanna look at the numbers that are going up and down on the column first, and then you start going into the smaller numbers after that. That's pretty much it. A couple things you can do to take care of your mics would be to make sure that they're very clean as often as possible. Just treat it like class, okay? So that's how you're gonna handle it. Be very delicate with it. This is an instrument, this is a tool, and metrology tools are very fragile. You can knock them out of calibration, you can damage them. Some of them are so sensitive that it will expand and contract with the temperature of the air. There's so much that goes into this. So just make sure that you're taking care of your equipment. Don't drop it, don't set it down hard, don't get coolant on it, don't get oil inside of it, you don't want to get dust or anything like that. Make sure they're in a sealed case. I always keep everything in a case just so that I don't get anything up into the gears and mess with my reliability of the actual tool. The other thing that you would want to do is just make sure that you're using just a little dab. There's like some 3-in-1 oil or just a little bit of cleaning oil, and just go through and then clean it. Make sure that it's well maintained, especially the pads over here. These are basically carbide tipped little shafts. There's a little pad for the bottom, and then the tip of this shaft, which makes them very, very brittle. So don't drop these and chip them, because they will chip. And if for whatever reason you have a burr that points up, then all of your readings are gonna be basically crap after that. Just take care of it, you know, just wipe it down. After you're done using it, just wipe it down, make sure it's clean, make sure there's not a bunch of crap and schmagma all over this thing whenever you're done using it. They'll outlive you for sure if you take care of them. And that's it for reading a micrometer, guys. I hope you guys learned something from this. I hope you guys practice this, invest in quality tools, buy once, cry once, you know what I'm saying? Get the stuff, make sure that it's gonna last a long time, take care of it, practice, practice, practice over and over. Just go around measuring a bunch of different stuff. Make sure that you keep it clean, make sure that you keep it in a case, and it will always give you reliable results consistently. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. Let's have a conversation. Let me know if you guys wanna see anything more specific on the metrology side in the future. Until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Peace.